All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. Now I'm going to skip a few lines. And then the justices, in fair round belly, with good cap on lined, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances. Or to translate. And then come the barristers, comfortable, well-fed, settled into themselves, sharp-eyed, neatly groomed, speaking with authority, full of quotes and opinions and examples, ready with a lesson for everything, certain they understand how the world works. Well, the barristers were there in all their glory, and what a day it was. Here's what happened. The first discussion this morning was all about the timetable. Everyone was given an opportunity to speak and make suggestions going forward as to how the public inquiry could be extended. If I may remind you, it's already 24 days long. During this week, it became blindingly obvious that everything was moving at a far slower pace than the PAC had anticipated. Slowed down by the hugely legitimate concerns of the third parties, the admission of new information that none of us had time to read, much less respond to, the economic appraisals that depend on the phantom 2016 feasibility study that even the DFI's own economic branch hadn't seen, just a spreadsheet version instead, otherwise known as the bespoke model. All calculations are based on this model that no one knew existed, much less have seen. Add into that the lack of habitats regulation assessment from NIEA. Any of these topics alone are controversial. Piled together, they become a toxic slag heap of misinformation, frustration, anger and injustice, and ought to be a source of shame for the departments of DFI and NIEA. Why so? Because they have actively derailed the timetable as a result of their inaction in the months preceding the inquiry. They had about 17 months to present all the information needed for the public inquiry, but they didn't do it. The information is simply not available to the third parties, effectively muzzling any questions and concerns we might have about financial calculations or ecological destruction. Without it, we are limping along, as Emmett McAleer said, like a wounded animal. To quote Conor Fagan, counsel for FODC, that he had a strong resistance to any further information being admitted at this point, and that he was putting a marker down. The Commissioner at this point reminded everyone that the inquiry is not the forum to process the application. The FODC Council followed up with this remark: having seen the economic concerns, wonder how it would play for the topic of ecology, conjecturing that it would be writ large. After this, there was a long discussion about how the applicants arrived at the value of gold, as presented by them to the Commission, with us, the third party, gradually teasing out the truth with probing questions, revealing that it was actually gold concentrate as opposed to gold ore. Apparently, there's quite a difference in the commodity value, which of course would impact the figures in the economic model, and therefore the very glossy projections the Alradian predicted would be quite different. As Emmett McAleer says, you've heard of gold fever. We seem to be suffering from a surfeit of concentrate fever. Around this time, Conor Fagan advised the Commission, be very sure of the analysis in front of you before you have confidence in the economics of this project. Might this be a good time to say, all that glitters is not gold? Yeah, I know, it's a bit naff. Coming back to the barristers. At some point during the morning, the Commissioner pointed out that the last written submission was made by Dalradian, and that none of the third parties had a chance to rebut that in the written evidence. Our last submissions were rebuttals to previous information. You remember, I spoke about how this happened yesterday in the last podcast. Anyways, the Commissioner queried whether DFI felt this was appropriate grounds to proceed with the inquiry, particularly as DFI's economic branch had raised concerns about Dalradian's statement of evidence. Barrister Mackay, counsel for DFI, said they were content any issues would be addressed orally within the inquiry. This opened up the possibility of department consultees being allowed to make extra oral submissions, where there would be no transcripts, effectively eliminating a paper trail. PAC decided then to break early for lunch to allow Mackay to get some guidance about this. I guess the Commissioner thought he would ring someone over lunch, like the Minister or Senior Counsel or the Permanent Secretary. After lunch, it appears none of this occurred, and instead he sent an email to his consultees, asking them how long it would take to raise matters orally. As you might imagine, this raised quite a few eyebrows, but he stuck to his line of reasoning, which was oblique to everyone except himself. After this, there were questions asked, wondering whether he even understood the issue. Mary Brawley, solicitor for the third party, pointed out, because of this situation, i.e. asking consultees to come to the public inquiry and present technical information, that the third party have no chance to respond. It is quite literally handing Dalradian a tactical advantage. But the barrister was adamant. The consultees would be there, and it was up to us to ask them whatever we wished. It looks like we are carrying on regardless, going through the motions of a public inquiry in farcical and ridiculous circumstances. Bad and all as the situation was, it was about to become a whole lot worse, if that's possible. It was around about this time that a protester, not one of the third parties, decided to film proceedings in the auditorium after we'd been warned all week that this was not allowed. He was pleading disabled and that he was unable to follow proceedings and therefore needed to film it. As you might imagine, everything came to a grinding halt. We were all told to leave the auditorium and the police were called. Some 30 minutes later, we were called back in. The protester had vanished and the circus continued. Back to business as usual. There was more conversation and questions about front-loading, back-loading and the Green Book being a gold standard. I have to put my hand up and say by this stage I'd had enough and stopped taking notes. If I ever do find out what they were talking about, I'll let you know. Sufficient to say, we third parties left this evening with feelings of disbelief, anger and a vague sensation of being shafted. It was all deeply unsatisfactory. There wasn't even an attempt by the departments to conceal their contempt of the process. They had a stunning lack of respect for us, the third parties, paying scant attention to what we were saying, sometimes even laughing in our faces, all the while laying the blame firmly with the PAC. The PAC have gone to seek legal advice and advised us to do the same. We wait the Commission to get back to tell us how they are going to manage a timetable that is now accepting new oral information and one expected to take twice as long as the original. And that brings to a conclusion the end of the second week of the public inquiry. We'll see you all soon.